Welcome in on this Monday. I'm Elizabeth Cook. Our monitors outside the White House today waiting for President Donald Trump to deliver what he is calling a sports announcement. Plus, Israel about to expand its grip on all of the Gaza Strip, the plan just approved today in the Middle East. And tracking what is set to be a very rainy week in New York City with the Met Gala tonight. This is CBS News 24/7. We begin today with Israel's cabinet approving plans to intensify its offensive in Gaza, with plans to seize even more territory and call up more troops. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also vowed to retaliate against Yemen's Houthi rebels after a missile strike briefly shut down Israel's main airport over the weekend. The explosion happened near an access road, injuring 4 people. CBS News Middle East reporter Courtney Keeley joins us now. Courtney, Israel says it will conquer and hold the territory. So what could that mean for the remaining hostages there?
Well, the hostages, the families of the hostages, according to the organization that does represent them, does not want to see an escalation. They want to see their family members home. There are about 59 hostages that remain, and about 24 of them are believed to still be alive. This is not happening with the approval of the Israeli public. There have been protests outside the Knesset and in Tel Aviv. But what we're hearing now from Netanyahu, who does not speak to the press normally, but does post on X, that this will be a forceful escalation and a possible permanent presence in Gaza. Bezalel Smotrich, the foreign minister, who's right-wing in a pro-settler movement, said Israel is going to conquer Gaza, no longer afraid of the word occupation. We're looking at this post-war landscape, bombing landscape. Hamas still exists, but not in the way they did before October 7th of when those massacres happened. You've got 2.3 million Palestinians being moved and relocated in Gaza into the south, according to Israeli officials. What they want to do is control the aid centers. Right now, we're entering the 3rd month of full blockade on Gaza. No clean water, no food, no fuel going in. The Israeli military, they've called it of reservists to move in, hold territory, and then corral the Palestinians into the south with an operating center for aid in Rafah. None of this is expected to happen until President Trump goes to the Middle East, in the Gulf, actually. Next week, he'll be visiting Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. Qatar has been brokering agreements between Hamas and the Israelis through other countries such as Egypt and Jordan. There is room for the possible talks of ceasefire, but Netanyahu's government, people like Bezalel Smotrich, they are not interested necessarily in any moderating forces. They are very clear in their language that they want to increase this.
Yeah, and leaning into the U.S. involvement in all of this, Israel is vowing retaliation against the Houthi rebels. What could that mean as far as further U.S. involvement in this conflict?
Well, it could draw everybody in. The problem, it's a slippery slope. We've got U.S. military engaging in military attacks against the Houthis in Yemen from 2 U.S. warships that are in the region. They already lost one of those F-18 Reapers that went overboard when they were trying to evade a missile coming from the Houthis. Now, what we think might even be a hypersonic missile that landed outside in a parking lot of Ben Gurion. That can travel quite further than just an erratic ballistic missile. And what happened was the interceptor, the long-range interceptor that was fired by Israel, or that fires automatically when these missiles are incoming, did not intercept this one. They have in the past. So we're seeing a missile landing right in a civilian population, right in the heart of Israel, right by the airport. Houthis are vowing to continue an operation against the Israeli airport, the main airport right outside of Tel Aviv. This is what we call mission creep. The U.S. is involved in Yemen. And not only have they vowed to continue attacking the Houthis for this, and the U.S. is doing that, what Netanyahu said over the weekend is he blames Iran. And we still are looking at U.S.-Iran talks continued scheduled eventually. But now Netanyahu's blaming Iran, all incendiary language. nothing about peacemaking today. We'll have to. This is a fast-moving story.
It is very fast, Courtney, and it's worth noting airlines have stopped flights into Israel since the Houthi strikes over the weekend. Can you give us an update on that? Are people finding alternate routes or just stopping travel to the region altogether?
Well, El Al is the main national airline, and they still are flying, but the international flights have halted, or international airlines have halted their flights. We do have to wait to see what happens next, like I said, because the Houthis are vowing to continue this, according to their spokespeople. They're vowing to continue to send missiles in the air into this area. Whether they're able to or not, we don't know really at the end of the day what hand they can play. I mentioned that it could have been a hypersonic missile that can evade these defense systems that shoot down missiles. So we have to wait and see, and that's probably what the airlines are doing as well. Let's just, holding on the ground and not flying while seeing what's going to happen next.
Yeah, out of an abundance of caution. All right, Courtney Keeley, thank you so much for that. All right, let's take you to the White House now, where we wait for President Donald Trump to make a big announcement. And it's related to sports, and CBS News sources confirmed what it's actually about. So let's get to our CBS News senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang, who's standing by outside the White House. Weijia, what are we expecting to hear from the president?
So at any moment now, the president is expected to officially announce that the 2027 NFL draft is coming to Washington, D.C. This is something that for decades the president has really had interest in, the NFL. And so he seemed to be excited to make this announcement, which we believe will happen on the National Mall here in the nation's capital. But we anticipate he'll have more details to offer when he does speak in just a matter of moments, Liz.
And Weijia, we understand the president's also meeting with Ksenia Karelina, the Russian-American ballerina who was released from a Russian prison last month. What can we expect from that?
Yeah. Well, she is coming here to the White House. It is a closed meeting for now, but oftentimes what happens is if the guest agrees to it, it will be opened up. And that means photographers, reporters, video cameras could be inside to capture the moment that he meets with this previous hostage of Russia. You can see here she landed back on U.S. soil, as you mentioned, last month. And at the time, the president said it was because his friend, Dana White, who is, of course, the CEO of UFC, called him up and asked him to help bring her home because apparently she's in a relationship with one of the fighters. And so it will be, we anticipate a heartwarming moment anytime that the president can bring an American back home.
I want to ask you about this latest move on tariffs from the president. He ordered a 100% tariff on movies made outside the U.S. It could have a huge impact on Hollywood. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the White House says no final decisions have been made about this, but that they are exploring the options because President Trump did remark that he wanted to do this because he said that the movie making industry in the country domestically is dying very quickly, which is true because the costs associated with making movies in the U.S. So because nothing has been official and the details have not been worked out, it's unclear exactly who this would impact and, whether it would impact only the scenes that are filmed outside of the U.S., whether it would impact the entire movie, whether individuals would be impacted. Of course, there's a lot of external factors at play here also, which is that the movie business is not what it used to be. I mean, the decline in sales as a result of the increase in streaming services and devices and the fact that movies are often packaged now for there rather than big box office capabilities also means that they're making less money. So it's very complicated. The governor of California has already weighed in and said he doesn't believe it's within the president's authority to put a tariff on these movies. So we'll have to see how this all shakes out. But again, the White House says they haven't worked out all the details yet and no final decisions have been made.
Yeah, it's one to closely watch because a lot of these movie studios have deals with other countries. They get tax incentives to actually make their movies overseas. So it's more complicated than just saying, okay, we'll make the movie in the U.S. instead of in a different country where they're getting a tax break or some, a discount to make those movies. All right, CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Thank you so much, Weijia. Great to see you. Well, taking a live look from New York City on a very rainy Monday, meteorologist Jessica Birch is tracking those showers when we come back right here on CBS News 24/7. It is part of our promise to you here at CBS News 24/7. We're watching our feeds across the country now, and we're following some breaking news out of Northern California for a fire at a refinery. Here's our coverage from CBS News Bay Area from earlier today.
This is video from earlier because this thick black smoke is coming up on all of the highways in the area. We're talking 680, Highway 4. You can see this huge plume of black smoke, and anybody who lives in that area is being told to try to avoid this. Close your doors, close your windows, stay inside, because we don't know what is in that smoke right now as far as air quality. The Bay Area Air Quality District is on the way to try to determine the health effects of what is going on right now, but this is an evolving situation. Again, taking a look at some of the pictures from within the past hour of that refinery, you can see here in this live picture, or this is a time lapse from within the past hour, and you can see how the smoke has just been really continuous. Again, coming from the oil refinery there in Benicia, the Valero oil refinery, and there was some sort of fire that broke out at about 9 o'clock. Now, this refinery has been in the news recently. You might have heard they're about to make some significant changes to their operation, including potentially not processing oil anymore. They say that they're going to stop operating in the way that they have been operating by next year. But in the meantime, we have another fire breaking out at the refinery, and that is some really nasty smoke, as you can see from these pictures from social media that were taken within the last hour, and the fire continues to burn right now. So more of that smoke being emitted as we speak. It is looking very hazy from this live camera you can see in the East Bay right now as that smoke sort of settles around the bay. This is in Benicia at the Valero oil refinery. So when it comes to that smoke, we don't know exactly how toxic it is, but it's certainly not a good situation. Again, the Bay Area Air Quality District telling people to stay indoors if you can, close your doors, close your windows, and try to avoid breathing this smoke as they try to figure out exactly what's going on and put that fire out.
And that is the voice of Ann Makovic with CBS News Bay Area following a fire or a large plume of smoke at a refinery in Benicia. That's about 20 minutes away from San Francisco in Northern California. Meanwhile, our monitors take us to Philadelphia now, where a college student is now suspended after a disturbing sign at a bar. Here's coverage from CBS News Philadelphia.
A Temple University student is suspended, accused of ordering a bottle service sign at a local bar with an anti-Semitic message. The servers who complied with the request are now also out of a job. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Ross DiMattei has more on the investigation.
In a letter to the university, Temple's president described this anti-Semitic sign as deeply disturbing, and he also said that any acts of hatred and discrimination have no place here at the university. We're also learning that Philadelphia police have joined the investigation.
I've been shaking. I've been so mad.
The founder of Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy, posting this video to Instagram, responding to an incident involving an anti-Semitic sign at his Center City bar.
I'm trying to be a little responsible. I'm trying to keep it together, but I'm on it.
Portnoy explained the sign put together by the staff came with bottle service for some customers with a message that the buyer crafts. It said, "Expletive the Jews." Portnoy says the two waitresses involved have been fired. He says the people who did it were, quote, two kids who go to Temple University. Temple's president, John Fry, released a letter saying the university is conducting an investigation into what happened. He said a student believed to have been involved has been placed on interim suspension. The president went on to say, in part, quote, "In the strongest terms possible, let me be clear. Anti-Semitism is abhorrent. It has no place at Temple, and acts of hatred and discrimination against any person or persons are not tolerated at this university."
It's incredibly insensitive. It's incredibly disgusting.
Jason Holtzman is with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. He called what happened unacceptable, saying anti-Semitic incidents have been on the rise since the terror group Hamas attacked Israel in October of 2023.
Ever since then, we've really seen an uptick of hate against Jewish people, vandalism of Jewish institutions.
Barstool Sansom Street released this statement on its Instagram apologizing for what happened, saying in part, quote, "This unfortunate incident is the opposite of what we stand for." In a second social media video, Portnoy later said he wants to use what happened as a teaching moment for what he called the culprits, saying he wants to send them to Auschwitz.
We're going to send these kids to Auschwitz, and they're going to do a tour of the concentration camps in Germany and hopefully learn something. And maybe, like, their lives aren't ruined and they think twice, and more importantly, other people, like, see, it's not just like words you're throwing around. So to me, that's a fair outcome of this event.
Temple has not yet identified the student who has been suspended, and Temple's president added that if any other students are found to have been involved in this incident, they too will face disciplinary action, including potential expulsion. Back to you.
Looking live now from New York City, where you can expect some rainy weather all week long. Let's send it over to Jessica Birch for the very latest on where the storm is. Jess?
Well, it's not just New York. It's pretty much all throughout the East Coast and the Northeast that's gearing up for some soggy, cool weather with a lot of fog in the forecast. We saw that earlier this morning. Now we're gearing up for storms to sweep across the Northeast. At the same time, we have another series of storms pushing across the South as we head into the next 48 hours. That's going to pack a punch when it comes to potential for flash flooding. We could also see more thunderstorms with lightning, hail, and more damaging winds around the corner. Let's take a look behind me. I want to time this out. Starting up in the Northeast, places like New York City will continue to see heavy amounts of rain at times as we head all the way into our Tuesday and Wednesday forecast. These bands of rain will continue to push in just from our inland areas moving offshore as we head into our Wednesday evening forecast. In total, we could gear up for about 2 to 4 inches of rain, which is impressive for the length of time that we're expecting for the next 48 hours alone. But you head down south, these storm systems too are packing a punch, anywhere from Houston, Texas, across the border over into New Orleans, and eventually stretching off into Georgia and Alabama. We're expecting heavy thunderstorms to make that impact all along the Gulf Coast. We're keeping a close eye on how much rainfall total we could see with those too. That's going to be more impressive, anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of rain. So that enhanced risk for severe weather today highlights central and southern portions of Texas. We could see large hail and damaging winds. It shifts tomorrow a little bit closer to Louisiana, that slight risk highlighting anywhere from Dallas all the way over into the coast, and that's where we're gearing up for 4 to 6 inches of rain from now into Friday. Back to you.
Jess, thank you so much. Now to the alleged bomb plot targeting Lady Gaga's record-breaking outdoor concert in Brazil. Police say they arrested 2 people, including a teenager, connected to planning coordinated attacks on Rio de Janeiro on Saturday. The 2 accused of planning to use homemade bombs and Molotov cocktails against children and the LGBTQ community at the concert. Back here in the U.S. to South Florida, dozens of people rescued from a sinking boat in Miami Beach. Local police and the Coast Guard brought all 32 people aboard to safety on Saturday night. Luckily, no one was hurt, but it's not clear what caused that 63-foot yacht to sink. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer held a press conference earlier today calling on a full investigation into the ongoing delays at Newark Airport. Take a listen.
We're here because the FAA is really a mess. This mess needs a real forensic look, a deep look into it. We know that airlines have been canceling flights. We have ATC folks giving warnings. We have a 1990 technology being used in 2025. And we have safety issues, plain and simple. So today, I'm demanding a full Inspector General investigation as to what went on. I have asked the Office of Inspector General to thoroughly investigate what's going on at Newark and in the East Coast.
CBS News correspondent Meg Oliver went inside Newark International Airport for an update on those delays, and this is what she found.
We are on day 5 of extensive delays and cancellations here at Newark Liberty International Airport. This is all caused by a severe staffing shortage of air traffic controllers. It's been building for quite some time and all came to a head last week. In fact, it forced United Airlines to cancel 35 round-trip air flights out of Newark going forward. The airport also says that weather today is playing some part of a role in all of this. There is fog in the area. The FAA has responded, issuing a ground delay program until 2:59 Eastern Standard Time that basically spaces out arrivals and departures across the country to try and make up for some of this. Now, despite all of the cancellations and delays, Newark Airport is pretty dead today, in part because of the canceled flights going forward. If you are flying today or in the coming days, make sure you check your flight status. This is something that is going to go on for quite a while. This is not something that can be fixed overnight. Back to you.
Meg, thank you so much. Coming up, the trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs getting underway today. The music icon charged with racketeering and sex trafficking and could face decades in prison if he's convicted. We're outside the courthouse in New York City when we come back. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Our monitor is taking us now to New York City, where the federal racketeering and sex trafficking case against Sean P. Diddy Combs is underway. Jury selection began earlier this morning. The hip-hop legend faces 5 counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Combs has pleaded not guilty, but faces decades in prison if he's convicted. CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan is outside the courthouse for us. Jerika?
Yeah, the way that this process is working is basically these jurors had to answer questionnaires asking them about their comfort level when it comes to dealing with sexual assault, any experiences they may have had, their experience with psychologists or psychiatrists, infidelity, those types of things. And then the judge asked them questions based off of how they answered the questionnaire, in which the defense and the prosecution get a chance to decide whether or not they want to seat that juror. As of right now, about 2 jurors have been approved by both the defense and the prosecution, but this is expected to go on for the next 3 days, and that being jury selection for the trial of Sean Combs, who is facing sex trafficking and racketeering charges. It could land him in prison for the rest of his life if convicted on all charges, but the judge making a point today to remind jurors that he is presumed innocent as of right now, unless those jurors were able to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, we'll continue to cover the very latest inside the federal courtroom, where jurors are questioned right now and being selected for the trial of Sean Combs. Back to you.
Rika, thank you so much. All right, let's stay in New York for a little bit here at the state to Westchester County, where a Congress member's town hall turned rowdy. GOP Representative Mike Lawler gathered last night with constituents, but several attendees ended up being booted from the event. Take a look at this. Yeah, folks there say the woman was asked to leave after shouting along with other audience members at the congressman's inability to answer her question. So let's turn now to CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian. Nicole, what else do we know about how things unfolded at this event?
Yeah, well, this town hall is like many we have seen over the last several months, in terms of some of them are quite animated and do get quite tense. And last night with Congressman Lawler was no different. He's actually had a few of these town halls in the last several weeks, but this one turned particularly tense with, as you see there, some state troopers basically forcibly removing at least 2 women from this event. Now, in the build up to this event, there were also some tensions or just general frustrations in terms of, many people had to go through a pretty lengthy process just to even get into this town hall. They had to have tickets. They had to, go through security. They had to do an ID check. So there were a number of different steps just to even get into the room. The congressman was asked a little over a dozen questions, maybe about 18 questions in all, everything ranging from the president's immigration policies. For instance, the congressman defending the situation involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, saying the due process was being followed. He was asked about impeachment. He was also touched on a lot of local issues, for instance, like SALT, which is a state and local tax deduction, an issue certainly that he has kind of been in the forefront of working on. Talked a lot about the economy, the president's trade policies. But again, even though the congressman insisted that he was trying to be transparent and forthcoming with these constituents, at the same time, he continued to face a lot of jeers from those in the audience.
Yeah, these town halls just seem to get rowdier and rowdier, Nicole. All right, switching gears, I want to go back to Capitol Hill. It's a crucial week for House Republicans in their effort to pass President Trump's legislative agenda. Some key hearings were delayed last week. Where do things stand now on this reconciliation bill?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's kind of a point of contention, in terms of some of these committees. They say, look, we never had a date on the schedule to begin with. So they kind of argue that these weren't delayed and that, from their standpoint, they are trying to meet this aggressive timetable on the part of the speaker, who really would like to get this reconciliation bill cleared through Congress by the Memorial Day recess. But there is a lot of heavy lifting that has to happen before a vote can take place on this bill. So that's kind of what's happening this week. A lot of meetings behind closed doors in these respective committees. For instance, House Ways and Means, you have the House Agriculture Committee, as well as House Energy and Commerce. And those are all key committees because they deal with, for instance, in the case of House Ways and Means, that's the committee tasked with dealing with extending the president's tax cuts and the language around that. Energy and Commerce is the committee tasked with dealing with any potential cuts to Medicaid if House Republicans choose to make any adjustments there. And of course, with respect to House Agriculture, that is the committee that handles, for instance, things like nutritional assistance and SNAP benefits, which have also been a point of contention. So until they can kind of get all of these issues resolved, which they're aiming to try to do this week, they aren't able to mark up those bills. So the hope is maybe they can do that next week in order to meet this Memorial Day deadline by the speaker. But even some members on these panels argue that it's more likely that this bill could be done closer to the July 4th holiday instead.
Nicole Killian, thank you so much. All right, coming up, President Trump says he wants to reopen Alcatraz, the infamous prison in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's been closed for decades and now is a popular tourist attraction. You've heard of it. So what it would take to make the Rock into a prison again? You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. President Trump talking about reopening Alcatraz to be a functioning prison again. It's been closed since the 60s for anything but tourists because, frankly, it's just too expensive to run. The president made that announcement on social media, saying in part, when we were a more serious nation in times past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm. That's the way it's supposed to be. He doubled down on that stance while talking to reporters outside the White House. Take a listen.
Here's an idea I've had, and I guess because the judges, so many of these radicalized judges, they want to have trials for every single, think of it, every single person that's in our country illegally, they came in illegally. That would mean millions of trials, and it's just so ridiculous what's happening. And it's long been a symbol, Alcatraz, so whatever it is. I mean, it's a bad symbol, but it's a symbol as law and order. And, it's got quite a history, frankly. So I think we're going to do that, and we're looking at it right now.
Okay, so let's bring in CBS News Bay Area's Veronica Macias, who is live near Alcatraz Island for more on this. Veronica, the president's interview there seemed to equate the immigration issue to judges to Alcatraz. A lot of people saying this would take hundreds of millions of dollars to get the place up and running again. It's still undergoing massive construction projects, or has been in the past. What's been the reaction?
Well, the reaction from people out here in the marina, I can tell you already, Elizabeth, is that this isn't a very practical idea. And while the president has released very little details about his plan, we already know that the director of the Bureau of Prisons says he is going to be supporting the president's idea here, saying, quote, they are going to vigorously pursue all avenues to support and implement the president's agenda. And they've also ordered for an immediate assessment of things, of costs, and looking into what it would include to get Alcatraz back up and running as a prison. And so far this morning, from the people that I've talked to out here at the marina, they tell me even though they also support the president's agenda, they just find this as a very expensive option, that perhaps there are other avenues that the president should be looking into. But from here across the marina, it's only about a little over a mile that you're looking at the rock here, with its, surrounding choppy waters being the primary reason that it was shut down some 63 years ago. It was very expensive to maintain then, and it could actually only house, that is, on average, some 300 inmates. And the reason Alcatraz was also shut down is because everything had to be brought in by boat, all the supplies, including water. That's according to the FBI's website on the history of Alcatraz. It was considered, though, the ultimate security prison, an ideal place to house the most dangerous of criminals. And while the president's idea is not being taken seriously by some lawmakers, already we have heard those in the administration and the agency saying they are going to be supportive of the president's agenda.
Well, we need detention beds, and we do contracts in a lot of states, a lot of local municipalities, so that's, I think, it's certainly an option, especially for the significant public safety threats, national security threats. I mean, should be on the table.
So we know from history that this isn't the first time that this has been brought up as an idea. Some 60 years ago, too, it was also brought up to perhaps hold and house some Cuban detainees, some 10 to 20,000. And of course, we know Angel Island also in the early 19th century being a immigration processing station for Asian immigrants who came to the U.S. Elizabeth.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, Veronica, the reason they say it is notorious or infamous is not only the people that were housed at that particular prison, the criminals that were held there, but also the conditions that the prisoners there had to endure while they were staying at Alcatraz. All right, Veronica Macias, thank you so much, live for us in San Francisco.
Right.
All right, we're following breaking news. A rescue operation is underway to get multiple bodies out of San Diego waters after a boat capsized at a state beach there. Let's bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, who's been following this story from our newsroom. Chanel, what do we know?
Well, a really fluid situation this hour. Authorities now say that boat overturned sometime this morning at Torrey Pines State Beach. This is on the coast in San Diego County. Take a look at some of the video that we have from the scene, where you can actually see that 12-foot boat on the shoreline. Let's show our viewers what that scene looks like right now. We're told that lifeguards from Del Mar, California, notified the U.S. Coast Guard that a panga boat, which is a small, open, outboard-powered fishing vessel, had overturned in the surf. Take a look at this video. There were apparently 16 people on board. 7 we know have been accounted for. 3 died, 1 person was injured, and 3 were responsive. 9 people, we're told by authorities, are still unaccounted for this hour. The U.S. Coast Guard has now launched an operation both in the air, as you saw there with the helicopters, and of course on the ground and in the water. It is now leading the search and rescue efforts there. Here's more on this from the fire chief on the ground.
This was a mass casualty incident. We had multiple people on the beach. It was estimated to be approximately 18 people on the beach. So we upgraded this to a major medical response due to the number of potential victims that we've had on the beach with this boat.
And any fatalities?
I can tell you that we did have 3 confirmed fatalities. We transported 4 people to our local hospitals here.
So again, 3 people have died, 1 person was injured, and 3 were responsive, but 9 people this hour are still unaccounted for. And based on the description, Liz, the U.S. Coast Guard is saying that it's treating this as a suspected human smuggling incident. Our Elise Preston is now heading to the scene, and she will bring you more live from the ground later on this afternoon.
Such a tragic story there, Chanel. Thank you so much for that report. President Trump speaking right now at the White House with a big sports announcement. We'll bring that to you live when we come back, right here on CBS News 24/7. Looking live now inside the White House, where President Donald Trump just announced Washington, D.C. is the site of the 2027 NFL Draft. You can see Commissioner Roger Goodell there with the president. We'll continue watching this for you and bring you more on CBS News 24/7. Church leaders look ahead to this Wednesday's conclave in Vatican City and the selection of a new pope. Here's coverage from CBS News New York from earlier today on how those cardinals will elect a new leader of the Catholic Church.
Hello from Rome here in Vatican City. They've just installed the famous red curtains at the balcony where the Pope will be introduced to the world. But first, there will be an election. That process begins on Wednesday in secret. How long it will take is anyone's guess. The most recent conclave, as it's called, to elect Pope Francis lasted only 2 days.
Back in 2013, the selection of a new pope came quickly.
The smoke is white.
White smoke signaled a pope had been chosen.
On this, the end of the first full day.
5 rounds of voting is all it took for the College of Cardinals to elect Pope Francis. The white smoke billowed. The Vatican crowd cheered as the Cardinals decided on a new leader of the world's 1.4 billion Roman Catholics.
Fratelli e sorelle.
Brothers and sisters.
Buonasera.
Good evening.
Pope Francis was the first Jesuit pontiff and the first from Latin America. He was someone thought of as more accepting of liberal ideas. This time, the group of cardinals tasked with electing a new pope is unlike any that has come before.
There are 24 countries in the world that have a cardinal elector for the first time ever, and there are about 72 different countries represented.
Pope Francis selected many of the people who are going to be in the electorate, which is more representative of the global church. How might that play out in the selection process?
Some folks have called this a conclave of strangers, and that's a wonderful thing. They all get to know each other. And it's also, the diversity is amazing, what Pope Francis did. He diversified the College of Cardinals.
Might we see a Francis II?
We could see a Pope Francis II, for example, and I think a lot of people are looking to that.
Here in Vatican City, over his 12 years as pontiff, Pope Francis appointed 80% of the cardinals, 108 of the 133 electors. From North America comes 16 cardinals, the U.S. with 10. Central America has 4, South America with 17. Europe will be the most represented at 52, 17 of them from Italy. Africa with 17, Asia 23, and Oceania 4.
That reflects the church. It makes it really hard to find one of your own to elect in any kind of, efficient way.
In the hands of the cardinals will come the decision as to whether there is another Francis and how long the world will have to wait to hear the words, "We have a pope."
The Cardinals will be sequestered from the world starting on Wednesday, when there will be one vote. After that, 4 rounds of voting will take place each day until one of them is named head of the Catholic Church.
Be exciting to watch. All right, a live look now from North Texas. We are tracking rain to start the week in places like Fort Worth. Let's bring in Jessica Birch with more on this latest system.
Well, there's 2 storm systems, one down in the south, starting all the way over in Texas and sweeping across the south within the next 48 hours, and another one up in the northeast, bringing in soggy conditions for our friends up near New York and Boston as we head into the next 24 hours, too. Now, the one down south could bring anywhere up to around 4 to 6 inches of rain across the Gulf Coast, all the way over into the panhandle of Florida, and at the same time, our friends up near New York, they could see anywhere up from around 2 to 4 inches of rain. So let's take a look behind me. I want to time both out so you're prepared before we head out the door. We take a look up north, places like Pennsylvania, New York City, and all the way up into upstate New York, eventually over into Maine. We're seeing strong thunderstorm activity on and off from now until Wednesday as that starts to move offshore. Now this, we've already seen so far anywhere up to around 5 inches of rain in cities close to New Jersey and all the way over into New York too, but we'll see an additional 2 to 4 within the next 48 hours. But as we head down south, this one reminds me of last week's storm system. Strong in size, large in size too, and packing plenty of severe weather right around the corner as we head into our Tuesday and Wednesday forecast as it slowly moves across the Mississippi, bringing in severe thunderstorm activity all along that Gulf coastline. Today, though, we take a look at our severe weather outlook. It's really showing that enhanced risk over central portions of Texas. We turn the page tomorrow, it's going to look a little bit different. I'll show you that in a second. Today, we're concerned about large hail with those thunderstorms. We're also concerned about damaging winds, too. You turn the page to tomorrow, though, now we're starting to see those storms shift off into the east, eventually over the Mississippi. And in this time, we could see anywhere up to around 2 to 4 inches of rain this afternoon, but we'll continue to add to that anywhere up to around 6 inches of rain, so a half a foot from now until Friday, just across Louisiana, pushing over into the Gulf Coast area of Mississippi and Alabama too. Back to you.
Jess, thank you so much. Now looking live from Los Angeles, where a lot of your favorite films get made. But President Trump says America's movie industry is dying a fast death. Here's coverage from CBS News Los Angeles on how the president is trying to change that.
President Trump takes aim at a new target in his trade war, and this time it's the entertainment industry.
He says he wants to place a tariff on movies that are produced outside of the United States. KCAL News reporter Rick Montanez has more on Trump's latest target.
There has long been concern about movie production here in Hollywood and that it has slowed down significantly. Just since the start of the year, Film LA is reporting that movie and TV production is down 22% here in Hollywood. And with this latest announcement from the president to add a 100% tariff on foreign movies, the president also called them propaganda. The president says the movie industry in the U.S. is dying a fast death. But Variety reports domestic box office numbers were actually up 15% last year. They are still lower than pre-pandemic levels, though. In his post, the president says the 100% tariffs will apply to any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. Major movie franchises like Mission Impossible and Avatar shoot overseas. The president says he wants movies to be made here in America.
Other nations have been stealing the movie-making capabilities from the United States. And I said to a couple of people, what do you think? I've done some very strong research over the last week. And we're making very few movies now. Hollywood is being destroyed.
There is a lot of questions surrounding how exactly this would work, whether it would impact movies that shoot partially overseas or fully overseas. Would it affect domestic production houses? There's still so much to understand with this. Hollywood and movie producers all around the world are watching to see what happens next. In Hollywood, Rick Montanez, KCAL News.
Thank you, Rick. Now to the alleged bomb plot targeting Lady Gaga's record-breaking outdoor concert in Brazil. Police say they arrested 2 people, including a teenager, connected to planning coordinated attacks in Rio de Janeiro on Saturday. The 2 individuals accused of planning to use homemade bombs and Molotov cocktails against children and the LGBTQ community at that concert. Back here in the U.S. to South Florida now, where dozens of people were rescued from a sinking boat in Miami Beach. Local police and the Coast Guard brought all 32 people aboard to safety on Saturday night. Luckily, no one was hurt, but it's not clear what caused that 63-foot yacht to sink. All right, let's go back live now inside the White House, where President Donald Trump just announced that Washington, D.C. is the site of the 2027 NFL Draft. You can see Commissioner Roger Goodell there with the president. Now, remember, this is a 3-day event. It's going to be held in 2027, in which NFL teams will select incoming rookies from that year's class of prospects. That will be planned for the National Mall. It will be the first time the event has ever been held there. Trump's announcement comes after the Commanders and city officials announced plans to return the team back to D.C. We'll have more on this when Lindsay Reiser takes over, but we're going to talk a little bit about more of the president's announcements, not only on how he plans to change Hollywood and have more movies made here, but also bringing the NFL Draft to Washington, D.C. in 2027. Lindsay Reiser takes over next, right here on CBS News 24/7.